All right, yo, 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 it's your boy Yoshikidneo, and today we are back in the world of Boridil, and we are doing another episode of the Chronicles of Boridil. A little thing that I meant to start sort of on the regular. I was gonna do it on Saturdays since I don't really usually have stuff going on Saturdays. But since the first episode, I have literally been super busy with doing full-time school over the summer, full-time school now in the fall, as well as doing moving and working full-time at my job with the guards. So I've been using my Saturdays to mostly do relaxation and housework and things like that. But I think I'm gonna start doing these. If not every week, I'm gonna try to do them every other week, except for obviously drill weekends. But the last session we talked about a lot of the lore of the world of Borodil, which is my homebrew world. It's actually the players I don't believe have caught on to this yet, but it's actually the exact same world as my very first campaign that I started back in 2015, no, it was 2016. Or no, 2017 is when I first started DMing. So it's been about 3 years now, which is pretty cool to think about. 3 years of DMing, and I feel like I get better after every session. But who knows? But anyway, yeah, the World of Borodil is my homebrew game, and the Kingdoms of Borodil was the second campaign. We ended up stopping the first one because I had made it for one group, and life happens and people started to drop, and then before I realized it, it was almost a completely new group of people except for one person that was there since the beginning. So I was like, how about we just scrap everything? Because obviously you guys don't know what the story is that's going on. Actually, I might talk about that instead. No, that'll be another topic. We'll talk about the old world. Today we're going to talk about the old party and their players, which I have all of them out here on the map right now. Oh wow, the grid looks trippy on my stream. It's hilarious. Anyway, so we made a new campaign called the Kingdoms of Borodil, which we played for about a year, and then right before or right after the year mark, I actually disbanded that campaign because it just wasn't as fun running it. Um, my other group that I started a second group when I had some extra time on my hands, and I realized that I was having way more fun with that group than the first group for various reasons. I like all the players individually, but as a cohesive unit, it just wasn't there. Uh, but today we're going to talk about the characters that they had created through that campaign. We're going to go in depth with a couple of them just because of the fact that, some of the players wrote a good portion of story. They actually did a lot of role playing, they did a lot of character development stuff, and it was really cool. Some of them, as you can tell, I've got each individual like players characters that they played grouped up. So we're gonna start with Dallas. So Dallas is one of my boys from back in Nashville. His first character that he played, actually, from the first campaign and the second campaign, the only character he ever played was a barbarian. The second time around, he ended up changing his subclass like 5 separate times, uh, which was fine. I was fine with allowing the players to switch and do stuff, but it's also kind of annoying when the players keep doing that. And because we play online on Roll20, or at least we did, currently, as you can tell, this is completely different from Roll20. This is Foundry, but I would have to do a lot of the modification to their character sheet, or I'd have to create them a whole new character sheet, and so that bore into a lot of my time with my D&D prep, and I didn't really dig it. So it started to get old after the third, fourth time that somebody would just be like, I want to change characters, but it only happened with a couple of the players. But anyway, so let's take a look at All right, so and Ryu was his first character in the second campaign, and as you can see currently, he is a demigod. He was a child of Zeus, which we reflavored to be in Ryu, the son of Talos. So he was the son of Talos, the god of, I believe it's thunder and storms, actually. You know what? Let's Google it real quick. Let's get my lore right. D&D god Talos. Talos from the yes, god of storms. So Dallas was really big on the idea of having a character that was like essentially like lightning. He really liked the whole elements and things like that. So he made in Ryu. But the first thing he did was he made him to be, I believe, a dragon, Path of the Dragon. Yeah, this one right here. So I'm actually gonna we'll bring this up. So he played the Path of the Dragon Barbarian, which was actually a really cool, really neat class. I liked it a lot. It was a homebrew that he found on D&D Beyond. So essentially, he would pick one of the dragon colors, which he picked blue for the lightning damage and stuff. And you know, it gave you the breath weapon. It gave you these cool benefits that dragons would get. He never got to level 10 with this character. I believe they all got to level... Actually, we can see right here. Level 8 within Ryu before he switched to his new character. So, I guess we'll go into the backstory after we go through his first few sessions of playing the character. So, in the Kingdoms of Boridil, essentially the encompassing story that it started out was that the players were part of what's known as the Peacekeepers Guild. The Peacekeepers Guild was a neutral faction within the realms that was essentially the whole purpose of it was so that each of the kingdoms didn't have to build their own military might. And the reason for that was that some of the kingdoms were obviously more aggressive than some of the others. So in order to sort of make this cohesiveness between all of the kingdoms, the Peacekeepers Guild was founded in the City of Guilds, which was like the neutral empire that consisted of all of the empires together. So the players started out being part of the Peacekeepers Guild, and the whole backstory behind that is that they were thrown into a group, and that's how they started to become friends. Was they were thrown together. They didn't really have a choice in the matter because they either chose this life or were forced to go through this because of their kingdom that they came from. So in Ryu, being a barbarian, Path of the Dragon, the most beneficial story from this character when he was Path of the Dragon was when the party was going through, and what they wanted to do was they wanted to save this group of ogres that were essentially forced from their home and looking for a new place to live. They didn't want to bother anybody. They weren't there for bloodshed. They were being led by a ogre magi that was trying to turn a new leaf for ogre kind. But of course, people don't see it that way, and this was my take on trying to take an evil race, or an evil monster rather, and turn them into someone that's not that bad. You know, honestly, role-playing ogres and hill giants and things like that is one of my favorite characters, one of my favorite monsters to roleplay, because you just talk like this, and you get to do stuff with your boogers and things like that. It's hilarious. But my ogres are the comedic relief of this game. them and goblins. I use them in hilarious ways. I've got goblins that are good guys that are just, chilling in the mountains and stuff like that. This group found them, but they they fucked it up, so they didn't get to see the benefits of it. So as they were trying to save this ogre clan, what ended up happening was there was a fight at the ogre clan's hideout. The creature that was trying to destroy these ogres was an oni, and the oni is essentially he's kind of like an ogre as well, except for he's more demonic. So my whole goal was that the ogre magi was brothers with this oni, and the oni wanted to kill him more than anything. So the oni, being able to shapeshift, turned into the leader of one of these like outlying towns, and was essentially trying to rally them up to go and kill the ogres. And then he knew that the ogres wouldn't fight back because they were trying to turn a new leaf. They would rather die to these farmers, these lumberjacks, than to slaughter them all and just have the City of Guilds send in a group to just decimate them. Which, as an ogre magi, he's got a high intelligence. That makes a lot of sense. Well, the group, after they started to figure out kind of what was going on, they ended up helping defend against this attack that had happened from this lumber village. The thing is, though, is all of the lumberjacks that were there to fight were noticeably mind controlled, for lack of a better term. I forget what exactly I did. I'm pretty sure it was a serum that I had the Oni get from a hag that lived in the forest nearby. That the people of that town went to for healing and remedies and stuff, but it never worked out very well. But when you live out in the in the forest, you gotta take what you can get. So the Oni was working with this hag to take down these ogres, and the hag ended up giving him some sort of serum, and he was able to essentially get all these lumberjacks to drink or eat. I didn't get the specifics because the party didn't ever try to investigate it, but anyway, they were all mind controlled, and as they were fighting, the party, most of the party anyway, realized this, except for Ryu. And Ryu was just killing everybody straight up. Everybody else is like, I do it non-lethally. I do it non-lethally so that they could, preserve the people. Because what they noticed is when they, dropped one to 0 hit points, they would essentially come back to and get knocked out. So they're like, oh shit, these guys aren't even in their right mindset. But Ryu was just killing people, and then the party was like, hey dude, we're trying to save these guys. And he's like, cool. So he switched gears. I, at this time, was using a critical success and a critical fail table. So if you rolled a natural 1 or a natural 20, you would roll on this big-ass table that had like 50 results for each one. And he ended up attacking somebody, failing, and it ended up breaking his weapon since it was a mundane weapon. So he got pissed off, I believe, in character and out of character, which is hilarious. And he used his breath weapon, which is, like a blue dragon's lightning. It's a straight line of just utter lightning damage. And he ended up doing this on a lot of the villagers that had been knocked out and just so conveniently were in a line. So he killed like 9 people with his thing, and the party was pissed. They did not like that at all. So afterwards, they ended up trying to talk to him, but Dallas is a hard-headed dude, and I say that with love, dude. But yeah, in character and out of character, he's a very stubborn bastard. So he was having none of it and was just, keeping true to his character. He's like, I got out of hand, I admit that, but they still shouldn't have attacked us anyway, so they got what they deserved, and, that's what happens. So Dallas played in Ryu all the way up until the character arc, the final character arc, or I guess story arc rather, that we played before retiring in Ryu. He ended up leaving us for about 2 months while he was doing some job training and stuff, but Essentially, the backstory that he had wrote for this character was that he was the son of Talos from Mount Celestial, and long story short, his father didn't like his rash nature, so he sent him to the material plane as a mortal to try to figure out, how to be, I guess, for lack of, to be humble, to control his rage. That was his whole character's premise, and he didn't do a very good job at doing that. He talked shit to a lot of NPCs, and when the NPCs, talk shit back, he would try to whoop their ass, and that's not how you control your anger. So he was definitely the player that made a lot of bad decisions that ultimately hindered the party. So I could tell that after a while it wasn't funny anymore and people weren't having like a good time with it. So luckily he ended up changing this character and he went to his new character here, Shojin Law. So Shojin was, I believe he's a 16-year-old kid, and what it was during the Lightbringer story arc that we were doing. They were trying to find their first pillar of light in order to light it to get rid of some of the demon lords. And when he switched to Shojin Law, Shojin is actually a abyssal kin, another homebrew race from D&D Beyond. They're essentially the offspring of a very powerful demon. So it kind of worked out that, he was born a demon and he was trying to, get rid of the world of demons because he understood what they were. They're chaotic evil. So he was in this mountain range that the party just so happened to be at, looking for an entrance to this pillar of light. But he had no other information. So when the party found him, they're like, well, that's awfully convenient that you're doing the exact same shit as we are, so how about you join us? So, the backstory on Sho is that he was an adopted member of the Yodian royal family. The Yodian Empire is on the central continent to the south, and they're mostly elves. The royal family is elven, except for the queen. I believe she is human. She's either human or half elf. I can't remember which one. Players haven't gone there, so I don't have it fully fleshed out. But so he's the member of that royal family, and essentially, from what he wrote down right here, is that he was living in a small village, and his parents summoned a demon that destroyed his town. But because of his psionics, he essentially was able to wipe out the demon without even knowing it. And it wasn't until word got around that this village had been destroyed that a gentleman by the name of Firo, who the players that played in this will know exactly who he is. Oh. There he is. This is Firo, my boy. Can I do... I guess I have to search it up elsewhere, but yeah, Firo's he's a really high level rogue that lives within the Yodian Empire, and he's actually sort of like he's the protector of the youngest princess of the Yodian Empire, which I'm not going to give away who that is here because there's a very good chance that the party's going to the Yodian Empire here soon, and most of them are going to know exactly who this lady is, or this princess is. So anyway, he got brought in by Firo. They raised Sho to be who he is today, and eventually, after the attacks from the demon lords started happening, he knew he had to do something about it. So he went off and started looking for these pillars of the Lightbringer. And Shojin was a cool character, but I don't think he was a good fit for Dallas because of the fact that Dallas, I don't believe, ever read the player's handbook. So psionics, there was a lot of rules with the psionics, and it just didn't really flow well, and that probably didn't help with my entertainment because I had to remind, you know, how the abilities worked every session, and it was starting to get old. Show, his backstory was wonderful. Play style wasn't that great. I'm much more enjoyed in Ryu just because barbarians are very simple, very easy to play, but like the role play aspect was there, is really good. So next we'll go to Kirsten, my sister-in-law's characters. So she made two characters during the whole campaign. Cyrene was her main character, and Sito, or I think it was Keto actually. Keto was essentially only used for 2 sessions, I believe, and that was because there was a moment in time where Cyrene had gotten captured, and the party wasn't sure if they were going to go and save her or not. So she made Keto just in case they did go to save her. And I think she was going to use her sorcerer that she actually just lost, Tamsin, if they didn't go save her. So Cyrene was a very wonderful character. She came from the Merfolk's Empire, which isn't one of the main empires. They're actually like one of the minor factions in the world. So she was born into one of the noble houses, House Araxi, and her backstory pretty much goes to the fact that, being a noble, she fell in love with a gentleman that I don't believe was of nobility. He wasn't of noble birth. And he saw how the nobles were treated compared to the commoners and tried to stop it, or at least change it. And she had started to join him in his ideals and essentially follow exactly what it is that he was doing. Until the moment where he was going to essentially do a terrorist act and like destroy a location with a bunch of people that were, innocent, perfectly innocent. There was no reason for him to harm those that had done nothing when the nobles are the ones that he's after. So she ended up alerting the authorities that it was going to take place, and it was at that point that he was captured as he was trying to have his plans come to light. After this, she realized that, you know, let's see, she actually wrote quite a bit, and I'm always very proud of Kirsten's writing ability. She's very good at getting the backstory down. She's starting to get better at doing the role play and stuff like that, which is neat because she's opening up the party that we had when she was playing Cyrene. I just don't think she was very comfortable playing with all those folks because they were all dudes that she had never really met. Like, she knew who Gerald was. She had met Gerald. She never met Reed, Martin, Dallas, or Jeff. So she didn't know them personally. And I mean, in all honesty, like this group right here, all they really wanted to do was fight stuff. And Kirsten wasn't the very like she's not the strongest combative player, which is fine. Not everyone needs to be good at combat. But yeah, so she joined that group, ended up ratting them out when they were trying to do something that was, against her code. And afterwards, let's see. So she felt betrayed by the rebels, and she didn't trust the royal family. So she went to the city of guilds to enlist in the Peacekeepers Guild in order to start doing some good for the world. So that's the backstory of Cyrene. Now, the one thing that I had told my players when we were starting this campaign is that whatever background you chose would end up being very important. And the funny thing is 3 of the 5 players all chose noble as their background. And all of them came from some royal family or someone that was, right there in the hierarchy of whatever empire they came from. And because of that, like since I noticed that early on, that's when I decided that royal blood would be something that is coveted by people. Coveted by mainly, I guess, ascended creatures. So let's just hags, for instance, because the party I love, hags are my absolute favorite creature in the game. I love how their backstory is. I love how I play them. Uh, like witches and all that, like the Witch of the Wood, like those stories have always intrigued me. I love those stories. So all the nobles have this special property in their blood. It doesn't do anything. Isn't like it doesn't. There's nothing that the players could, get a benefit from for being a noble and having this special bloodline, but other creatures can benefit from it. Hags, angels, demons, devils, all those like prime or not primordial, all of those like outer planar beings, things that are like super ancient and things like that, they can benefit from royal blood. So, her being of noble birth, or since she picked nobility, but then she made herself part of like a minor house, her backstory that I had planned out for her, and I guess I need to go back to Ryu and show, and this will be more of a stream about what I had planned for these characters, and where I was hoping to go with their like story arc when we got there. Cyrene, she ended up finding out that she had this royal blood. I believe she was told by. It all came when she was captured by a creature of Dagon, Dagon's chosen, essentially. That they found out that Cyrene had royal blood. They also found out that Lacan had royal blood. Neither of them had said anything about where they were from. The only noble that had said anything was Rakim, aka Zuka, his nickname. He told everybody that he was of the royal family and that this was his journey to essentially prove his worth before he became the king. So once Cyrene found out that she had royal blood, she was like, that doesn't make any sense. I'm not from the royal family. So I had put in a bunch of different breadcrumbs that I don't believe she ever picked up on, which I don't think anyone else picked up on. If the old party ever watches this video, which I highly doubt, uh, let me know if you picked up on the fact that Cyrene was actually the king of, what is it, Triton? Hold on, let me see. She has. So she's from Vaporis. I don't know where exactly she put it, but Cyrene was like in one of her backstories somewhere. Maybe I've got it on my. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, her whole backstory was essentially that she is from Vaporis, part of the House Araxi, um, and the king. I'm pretty sure his name was like Triton or something like that. Very, very Little Mermaid like. There it is. Yeah, the current king Triton, ruler of the Merfolk. Her backstory, her story arc, I should say, was that she was going to find out that she was King Triton's illegitimate daughter. She was given to House Araxi under the false pretense that who she thinks her mother and father, her father were Zos and her mother Othlin, were not her parents at all. In fact, it was King Triton, and I believe I didn't go any further than that, some unnamed woman, or merfolk rather, and they gave birth to Cyrene. So, for protection, so that she wouldn't be executed or anything like that, or they gave her to House and they raised her as one of their own, and that is what she thinks is her family. So, her story arc was going to revolve around the fact that she ended up finding out that all the merfolk were essentially captured by the Marrow. The Marrow, for those that you don't know, are evil merfolk. They come from the abyss, or they are spawned when merfolks get too close to those really dark locations. The merfolk were under Dagon's control, and I think the pinnacle moment for Cyrene was when she and Lacan got captured by this creature called Dagon's Drowned. Let's see. Dagon's Drowned. There he is. This guy, this ugly motherfucker right here. So this guy, when they were going to do Rakim's story arc, their ship got intercepted by Sumero and this motherfucker. This guy was looking for Cyrene or Lacan or Zuka to capture them, bring them to a ritual site where they were going to be sacrificed in order to bring Dagon into the material plane. Because the thing about royal blood is that it's one of its special properties is essentially opening portals to the material plane for those of the outer planes. So Cyrene and Lacan both got captured by this guy, and that battle, it was literally like right there. They should have won that battle, but this creature got away with 1 HP because Cyrene ended up missing with her last 2 attacks that she did on him. So Dagon's Drown ended up fighting Lacan like one-on-one. Lacan ended up failing to Dagon's Drowned. Dagon's Drowned took this opportunity to bring Lacan underwater as he got what came for. He got one of the persons he was there for. And Cyrene jumped in the water after him, while the rest of the party were all under the ship trying to repair it and stuff. So the party ended up getting separated for a very short amount of time. And Cyrene dove in at super low health and decided to go in with a melee attack as opposed to a normal spell attack. Missed it. Dagon's Drowned ended up being able to take her out and knocking her out, and dragged both of them to the bottom of the sea. And it wasn't until this point that Mirrodin and Rakim and Inryu... Actually, I don't even think Inryu was with us at this point. I think it was just 4 of them. Inryu was somewhere else. So yeah, it was just those 4. Oh, and Alfric. Alfric is Jeff's character. They ended up deciding to go underwater out of session to try to save their characters, because in theory they both died. They would have both died. There's like Cyrene can breathe underwater, Lacan can't. But I made up story elements that allowed them to essentially resuscitate Lacan underwater in these sort of like pods that had these little air pockets. And they were using these pods with the characters wrapped in seaweed, almost like a straight jacket, until they were ready to sacrifice them to open a portal to bring Dagon into the material plane. That's where Keto came from. Keto is a pirate, druid, of course. Kirsten really likes the druid class, which I can't blame her because druids are my favorite class as well. And Keto was really just there to come and help bring Cyrene back. And that's also where Cassius, which is Lacan's brother, one of his many brothers, came from. So he made Cassius, which it was actually hilarious that, Reed is a min-maxer. 100%. And nothing wrong with min-maxing. I'm a min-maxer myself whenever I do play. I want to make the most optimal decisions for my characters because I don't like any pitfalls. But I do like flaws. There's a difference between pitfalls of your character and useless abilities and flaws of your characters that you roleplay out. But he picked the Cavalier, which is a character that relies heavily on their mounts, and they were going underwater. So when he made that character, I was very confused, but it was whatever. So he ended up playing that, and this was at the time Lacan was actually a fighter. Lacan also went through a lot of changes, kind of like in Ryu, and changed the subclass quite a few times, which also annoyed me. But what can you do? They were successful in saving Cyrene and Lacan, but the people that helped them do it were Cyrene's old, I think she called him a flame, like merfolks called their lovers their flame or whatever, is what her thought process was. So her former flame was trying to seek her out. But what they didn't know was that this gentleman, Donvis, there he is. Donvis is the dude. So this is her old lover. And he, after being ratted out, he knew that he didn't have the power he needed in order to essentially take it to the royal families. And that's when he got a little too close to the abyss, and that's when Dagon reached out to him and essentially perverted his mind and made him believe that Dagon was the answer. So Donvis was looking for Cyrene at this point so that he could use her to bring Dagon back. But what really happened was that he had found a new lover, another royal, and had convinced her to come and save Cyrene after they had heard the news that they were taken by the Marrow. And his whole goal was to swap out his new lover with his ex-lover, who he was obsessed with. Like, the crazy obsession that he, always was looking for a way to get Cyrene back. So this was a fun little character that I was able to throw out every time they were on the open sea, was Donvis coming back to try to get Cyrene, to try to convince her to join him, to come and be back with him because he loved her in this obsessive way that it was extremely creepy. And it worked out very well because Kirsten was never very comfortable when I played this character. So he was able to swap out his new lover for Cyrene, and they ended up using that character, that royal, who I forgot the name, it didn't honestly matter, but she was sacrificed, the portal was open, and Dagon came through. They were able to save Lacan and Cyrene, which in theory, because they had to fight Dagon's drowned again, in theory I kept them preoccupied, and Dagon's drowned was able to whoop some ass on some other characters that were with him before like this cavalry of merfolk came through to save the day. So Cyrene, Lacan were rescued, but Dagon was still summoned to the material plane, and the party, felt that they were at blame for that. And I mean, they didn't roleplay a lot, so they didn't know anything about Donvis. They didn't know what his objective was, except for to save Cyrene. And no one likes to insight check or, try to persuade them to tell them really what's going on. And that's perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. So, yeah. I think that was the pinnacle moment for Cyrene, was all of the interaction with Donvis and the fact that she found out she had this royal blood but never really knew why. She was starting to figure it out, but she never got the full answers. But her story arc was going to be to go to the abyss and save her merfolk family. and bring them back to the material plane from Dagon's realm. But we never got there, unfortunately. So next we'll go into Martin's slew of characters that he made. So he's got 3 characters that he created. He got Starden was a changeling. So this is what Starden actually looks like. That's the persona that he took on most often, but this was his actual look, and these were some of the other, I guess, personas that he could have changed in. The funny thing about him being a changeling was the fact that he never ever used the changeling ability. He's a very secretive player, much like Reed. He likes to make all this stuff about his character, but then never reveal it. Which, as a DM, I mean, I make a lot of stuff and I never reveal it, but that's because I like the players to actually be able to find stuff out. When they ask certain questions, I want to reward them with the information as opposed to just being like, yeah, by the way, you know about this, this, and that now. And it's like, oh, well, that was easy. So I reward my players with lore if they're interested in it. So Starden, there was no backstory. I didn't know anything about Starden except for the fact that he was a changeling. So I don't know what Martin's goal was with him. I don't even think he had a goal with him, which is, it's fine. Sometimes you just want to play D&D. Martin was a DM for his own campaign. I had him run a one-shot when I was out of town during the first campaign, and he liked it a lot, so he made his own campaign. I actually played in that campaign for a little while, but then I got bored of being a player. I think I can only be a player for maybe like 3 sessions or something like that, and then it's time to go back to the DM role. I enjoy making the stories instead of playing through someone else's too much, which isn't a bad thing. Nothing wrong with Martin's way of doing it. It is a lot different from my style, so maybe that also is a reason I didn't enjoy it as much. But Starden unfortunately got fucking destroyed by an Ankeg. Where is it? Crusher Ankeg. This was a huge creature that they had come up on. This was, let's see, it was a CR7, and I believe they were all level 6 at the time, level 5 or 6. And yeah, this thing was it was pretty tight. Uh the contract that they had taken when this all went down was to go and investigate the northern farms in the city of Guild territory to figure out why the Ankegs were starting to encroach on the territory. When they went into this small little underground tunneling system, I had let them know that you guys hear heavy bashing coming from deep into the tunnels. And they, did their thing. They made a lot of noise. This creature has tremor sense. They made a lot of noise. They killed a lot of the Ankegs that were in there. And the Ankeg that they underestimated was this dude. So this is the runic Ankeg. It's essentially it was able to act as a vessel from the queen that the Ankegs were coming from to expand their territory. And it was able to connect all the Ankegs with a hive mind consciousness. So when the runic Ankeg was retreating to get to the Crusher knew exactly where the party was and what they were capable of. And the moment that they all got out of line, this motherfucker popped out and whooped their ass. Because the runic Ankeg had already deemed who was going in first, like, because this guy, his intelligence, 12 intelligence is, it's intelligent. It's a good, like, it's a smart creature. He was able to tell that going for Lacan would be, he's covered in armor. Rakim and I don't think, and Ryu wouldn't have been a good choice either because of his barbarian nature. So the runic Ankeg told this dude to go after Alfric, Stardin, Cyrene, and Rakim because they looked like they were the weakest. They weren't wearing heavy armor or medium armor, and that's exactly what it did. It went in and it whooped Alfric's ass and threw him off the side of a ledge into this underground lake essentially, which Cyrene ended up jumping in after him. And the Ankeg doesn't have, it's got a burrow speed, but it doesn't have a swim speed, so it's not going to jump in the water. So now he's only got 2 targets left. So he went for Stardin, and I mean, Stardin didn't have 10 HP, but I believe his constitution was actually pretty high, but he ended up just getting mollywopped. Let's see, what was the bite damage doing? The bite damage did 3d12 plus 7, as well as 2d6. So this creature did a fuck ton of damage, and that ended up, I'm pretty sure at their level, I think 2-shot Stardin. So it used its burrowing ability after it had bit him and grappled him to bring him to a different section where he laid or let him go so that he could go back and try to kill somebody else. And Stardin ended up failing all of his death saving throws, and that was the end of Stardin. I had decided to go with Xanathar's Guide to Everything, and I wanted to do some different resurrection rules. Essentially, every time you get resurrected, you have to roll on a table based on what spell it is, and there's a percent chance that things will, be fine, and there's also a percent chance that things will go bad or not work or be very awful for that character. And I had him roll on that table, and he rolled the one where his soul got utterly destroyed when it happened. And from what he told me I ended up doing the survey to sort of see where everybody was at with the campaign. And he told me that this death, for whatever reason, really upset him. He didn't feel that it was fair. And I don't know what to tell you, dude. You're like, the characters, I know what they're capable of, and I know how to play my creatures and stuff. They weren't, even though the Ankeg here has a 2 intelligence, it had enough information from the runic Ankeg at this time to be able to tell, like, what type of tactics it needed to use. Had they killed the runic Ankeg and then sort of left this dude alone, or not even gone further into the tunnel, eventually this creature would have forgotten. But that's not what happened. And the party didn't know that that was a thing, but I guess that's what happens when you just go in for the fight. So yeah, Stardin died. Martin wasn't happy with it at all, and I think that's what led him to making another character with yet no backstory. And you could tell that after or during Mirrodin's play that Martin just wasn't into it, and I could tell that, so it wasn't very fun. I didn't really have anything planned for Mirrodin. Mirrodin was a warlock, and his patron was, I believe, the Valkyrie or something like that. So, like I had started after he started to play a little bit more and actually get into the character, he started to I started to develop ideas for what to do with his backstory. But ultimately, after the moment, he's like, "Yeah, you can just write my backstory. I don't really care." I was like, I'm not doing that. So I can tell your heart's not in the game. But then he switched out Mirrodin for our last 3 sessions before I quit or stopped the campaign, and then he played Hope. And Hope, he had a very simple backstory of Hope is I think the daughter of Mammoth, the demon lord of greed. Is the devil, the archdevil of greed, and all she wanted to do was make him richer and make his plans go further. And he actually role played really well with Hope, way better than he did with Mirrodin. So yeah, maybe we all would have felt a little better if he had done that in the first place. But there were some inter-party conflicts between Martin and some of the other parties that all ultimately I think that's what led to the downfall of this group, was because the players themselves just didn't, like I said, they didn't mesh. They weren't friends. I didn't feel like they were friends at all. They were acquaintances who came once a week to spend 4 hours listening to me talk. And that's what this campaign was. It was me talking, which also led to the downfall, because I like when my players, role play between each other, and I just get to sit back for a little while. So those are Martin's characters. I didn't really put any work into his backstory or his character arc, mainly because he didn't put any work into his characters. So, Martin, if you watch this, I apologize if that upsets you, but it is what it is. So now we'll go to Jeff's character, Alfric. Alfric is a wizard, and for those of you that have watched any of my sessions, and Jeff has been there, Jeff literally only plays wizard. So it's his favorite class, and I really liked Alfric a lot. Alfric's whole backstory was essentially that he came from a secret wizard organization that was living in its own demiplane. And let's see. Hold on, I'm trying to figure out what my buddy Tony needs real quick. I think they want to play board games or something. Anyway, so Alfred came from this secret organization of wizards, and one of those wizards is this guy right here, Rixa. So Rixa, I don't think they remembered, but Rixa was actually in the first campaign. He was one of the first NPCs that had magic that they had met, and they actually met him in their starting location. Excuse me, their starting location of Siege the Crimson's fortress. And Rixa, he's actually a illithid, and his whole goal, I don't know what that is right there. But his whole goal is to figure out the ways of becoming an Alhun, which in the first campaign he was an Alhun already. In this campaign he hadn't quite gotten to that point yet. And Alhuns are undead illithids. They're essentially liches, except for not as powerful as an actual lich. So he was part of the I think the Elder Four is what Alfred called them. So there were four of these arch wizards that ruled this enclave of wizards in their secret society, and they sent out wizards like Alfric to go in search of items of great power, lore that has been forgotten, locations that had been untouched for so long, and then they would bring it back so that these guys could try to figure out the formula to becoming a lich. That was their whole goal. They made this, it was pretty much a cult. They had all these wizards under their control, sent them all over the world to try to find out all of this stuff. When they brought back all this data, the ultimate goal was that this would all lead to the formula to become an Alhun, so that they could live forever. So Alfric, he didn't know exactly what the goals of these wizards were, but he was ultimately cool with it, because his whole idea was to eventually become powerful enough to become like the big bad villain of another campaign. Like, I would actually use Alfric as the centerpiece of the campaign that they would have to fight. And I was trying to work with Jeff to get it to where that happened, but Jeff's not playing in this current campaign. Honestly, if somebody drops, Jeff is probably my first pick at getting that slot filled, because he knows Gerald and Kevin. He's met them before. He knows Kirsten now after my wedding. Not to mention from the first campaign, him playing with her, and he knows who Joe is. I don't think he ever actually talked with them like at the wedding or anything, but I know they'd become good friends pretty quickly. So I think Jeff would make a really good addition to the party, but only if someone leaves. I think he would also mesh well with Ethan, because Ethan's one of those guys that he can talk to anybody and have a good time, and it's like whatever. Uh, so Ethan's like really cool like that. But I don't anticipate anybody leaving this campaign anytime soon, unless life events happen. But yeah, Alfric's whole backstory: worked with the secret enclave of wizards, gathering magic items and information to bring back to his masters, and he didn't know what their goals were. But eventually, I think the story arc that I had planned for him was to finally figure out what they were after and to see if he was going to use that for them, like bring it to them, destroy the knowledge, or use it for himself, ultimately allowing him to become a lich. Regardless of what he did, I'm pretty sure Rixa was going to survive somehow, because I've got Rixa's a very intelligent creature. Does not, he picks his battles very carefully. So I don't think Rixa was going to be killed at all. But who knows? It could have happened. It could always happen. But yeah, that's Alfric. I don't think he actually put. Yeah. So there you can see the the flaw of Alfric is that unlocking an ancient mystery is worth the price of an entire civilization. So yeah, he was on the search for something. He just didn't know what the hell it was. So it was a very fun character to be able to put these seeds in. Jeff was the best role player out of this group because he was always asking questions to the NPCs. He was always try to find out more information, and it was a lot of fun. And I got complaints from the other players about it, and that rolls back to why this party disintegrated. So let that be a lesson to all DMs and players alike that if your party, if they're not friends and they're not like they're vibing and complaining over how someone plays their character or something like that, it it's ultimately going to fester it's going to fester to the point to where your whole campaign crumbles. And like that's not what this stream is about. Maybe one day I'll make a episode of the Chronicles of Boridil, and we'll talk about all the downfalls to this party. But it was fun while it lasted. But yeah, it was time to go, and it didn't hit me until Jeff actually left the party for very good reasons concerning the game and the players and stuff like that. So it was at that point that I was like, yeah, this just isn't going to happen. Currently, though, Alfric is with a gnomish inventor named Qualish. If any of you have ever looked into a it is a pre-written one-shot called The Lost Laboratory of Qualish. This was my Qualish. He's an artificer wizard, essentially. Um, but yeah, I ran that one-shot for these guys, and what I noticed is that they that one-shot, I think, ultimately was the demise of this party. Uh, the structure of it or the story of it or something just made it to where these guys did not have fun, which ultimately showed me that I'm not having fun. But it's a really, really well written module. But I don't think this group is was really prepared for it. A lot of bad shit happened to the party, like to the characters themselves on that journey, and yeah, that was unfortunate. But yeah, Alfric's currently working with Qualish right now because Qualish is, he's actually been able to clone himself so that he can achieve immortality, but if his laboratory were to be destroyed, he would lose all his work and wouldn't be able to clone himself anymore. So that is what Alfric has been doing. And I'm hoping eventually that might come out for the current party to investigate. So now we'll get to Gerald, who is currently the... So him and Kirsten are the only two players that were in my second campaign. Gerald was in the second campaign when I started running Curse of Strahd, and Kirsten didn't come by until... I think it was until two of the other players that I had started out with running Curse of Strahd ended up leaving, and since I wasn't running this campaign anymore, I let her join, since one, she's my sister-in-law, and two, she didn't have anybody else to play D&D with. Whereas these three guys all found another party, and Jeff, I was going to invite him as well, but I already had 5 players, and I've learned that 5 players is the sweet spot. 6 is just a little too much. 4 is just a little too little. 5 is my sweet spot. So Gerald made 3 characters. Rakim, who was the noble. He was from the continent of Cyrodiil, the Cyrodiil Empire, which is a mix of orcs and Luxodon. The story arc, this was the only story arc we actually got to explore, because no one else had revealed anything of their backstory for the players to, want to get hooked. I had, thrown many plot hooks at them, trying to get them to finally go and do their backstory stuff, but they just didn't want to do it. And, except for Gerald. Gerald wanted to explore his backstory, so we did. So, Rakim is on a pilgrimage. He's trying to figure out what he needs to bring back, or he's got to find something he can bring back to Cyrodiil to essentially help it prosper even more so than it already is. And when he's able to do that, he can become the king. It's very much based off of the... What is that race in Mass Effect? What is her name? Tali Zora. The Quarians. So it's very much based on the Quarians, how they go on a pilgrimage to do something. I don't remember the specifics. It's been a while since I played Mass Effect, but he went on this pilgrimage to try to find something, try to become stronger as a person so that he could take that experience and run Cyrodiil to help it achieve new heights. His story arc was really, really, really fun. Cyrodiil is a very deserty location. They were originally going on a contract to figure out why the Tusculi, this insect hive mind, what was it? Tusculi. Here they are. So the Tusculi here, they're these sort of like wasp creatures, and this is the queen. So there are these wasp creatures that are actually linked via a hive mind, and they lived in the mountains that were south of Cyrodiil. Now, what they had been getting, or what their contract was they needed to figure out why the Tusculi were attacking a place called Drymount Terminal, which was the mining facility that the Cyrodiil Empire was running in order to get their riches and stuff like that. The Tusculi had been attacking it because they use this, it's very much like Alien. They take a live host, they inject their eggs into their stomach, and then once the eggs come to gestation, they eat their way out of the host, and that's their first meal before they, essentially hatch as Tusculi larvae. So the orcs who lived, there were some orcs that lived in, let's go to the world map. Let's go to the actual world map. So the Cyrodiil Empire right here. So down here is the Drymount Terminal. Over here is the Tusculi location. And over here is where the orcs live. So the orcs, they also live within the Cyrodiil Empire itself, but this is where they came from. The Cyrodiil Empire and the Orcish clans, they weren't in unison at one point. It wasn't until Zuka's great grandfather, some long ancestral line, ended up being able to merge the two together to form the Cyrodiil Empire. So the orcs, there was a group of them that were attacking the Tusculi because the orcs weren't getting enough food. They were using the Tusculi, hunting and killing them so that they could eat something. The Cyrodiil Empire, they had no idea that this was going on. And the reason they didn't know is because the one pulling the strings was an orc. He was essentially the orc shaman trying to summon a demon lord of the orcs in order to bring them to prosperity and in order to overthrow the Luxodon power. So, since the Tusculi were losing in numbers, they went to the Drymount Terminal and captured as many people as they could to bring back to try to replenish their numbers. The party ended up finding this out. They found out that the orcs were doing this, and it wasn't until I think it was at the end of this that they ended up meeting the orcs that were doing all this stuff, and the orcs had told Zuka. I don't actually think. I wonder if I have the scene still. It would have been like Tusculi Lair, I think. Let me look, because this was one of my favorite stories that we got out of this. Me. The Tusculi feeding ground, maybe? Yeah, here it is. So the Tusculi feeding ground, they ended up hearing a lot of ruckus coming from here after they had infiltrated, talked to the queen, and figured everything out. They knew that the orcs were causing all the trouble, so they were like, "All right, cool. We will go and talk to the orcs and try to solve this thing." And that's when somebody had yelled Rakim's name from this location. Party rolls up in here to see what's going on, and this is the one of the characters they see. Her name is Zim. Uh, she was essentially one of the generals, or at least one of the high-ranking members of the Orcish clan, and she had been the one to essentially under this guy. It might have been a different shaman, but I used this token. But so this shaman was essentially influencing her, letting her know what the Luxodons were doing to essentially control the orcs and the orcish clans. She wasn't happy with it, and after she had broke out of this entrancement that the Luxodons had been doing to the orcs, which I'll explain in a second, she ended up being able to gather a small group, almost like a small army of orcs, and they were able to start doing all these tactics to try to overthrow the Cyrodiil Empire. Their ultimate goal, though, was to bring this guy out of the abyss. So this is Sigorius. This is a homebrew demon lord of the orcs that I had created. Now the thing is, the backstory here is that Zuka came into this situation. Let's see. So Zuka came into this situation seeing that there was an issue, or seeing the prince of the Orcish people being held captive by his own people. What Zim had told him is that he had a choice to make. He could either sacrifice himself, or he could watch them sacrifice the Orc Prince, which would ultimately lead to the revolt of the Orcs. So I essentially told Zuka, I told Gerald, I was like, hey, this decision, if you choose one option, you're fine, but if you choose the other, Zuka's going to die. and he ended up sacrificing his character for the story. What he didn't know was that Sigorius, who can be invisible, was behind them. So he started to cackle when he had made that decision. And he appeared, took Zuko with him, and took the prince, and then teleported out of there with both of them. And then the orcs left. This little pit right here, it was like a 50-foot drop. None of them had. I mean, Mirrodin could have dimension doored up there, but there were too many of them for them to be able to handle, so they ended up just leaving it be. So Zuka ended up sacrificing himself for the story. Sergorius, a demon lord, was already brought into this world, which the party had no idea at this point that it was the royal blood that allowed this to happen. Now, the only two royalties in this region are that of the Luxodon royal family and the royal clans of the orcs. The king of the orcish clan, it came. I'm pretty sure Gerald figured this out. The king was sacrificed in order to bring Sigorius to this realm, and Zim was using Sigorius was using Zim to essentially pit both the princes together, and he wanted the orcs. He wanted the Luxodons to kill the orcish prince so that the entire orcs would disband from the empire and attack the Luxodon empire. And if that didn't happen, the orcs were going to kill Zuka, and he was going to die in cold blood from the orcs' hands, which would have done the exact same reaction. Gerald understood this. He knew exactly what I was trying to do. He knew that regardless of what choice he was going to make, war was going to be brought to Cyrodiil. But he was able to solve the puzzle. I didn't make a solution. I knew the two major options that were going to happen, and he made a third option. Sigorius gave him this special dagger that was able to suck the soul out of a creature that it killed. So if you killed a creature with it, it would trap their soul within the dagger for whatever use the wielder would use it for. So they ended up doing a fight. There was a battle arena that I had made where they fought a group of orcs in a battle to, straighten everything out. If the orcs won, the orcish chieftain at the time would take over the Cyrodiil Empire, and if the Luxodons won, they would remain at the top of the empire. So this was their way of essentially allowing the control to flop back and forth when they had times of disagreement. Was this battle, because it's an orcish, it's in barbarian tradition that whoever sits at the top, if you disagree with them, you have to battle them. If you kill them or defeat them or whatever, now you're at the top. That's how the orcs do their thing. This hadn't been done in years, though, in centuries, because the Luxodons were essentially drugging all of the orcs in the water supply, making them not as aggressive. So they were very, very relaxed compared to how orcs normally are. So they never wanted to really fight unless they had to, or if they were hunting and stuff like that. So, Gerald ended up finding out this information from his father, the king of the Cyrodiil Empire, and knowing that, he knew that the Luxodons were in the wrong. He didn't like what they were doing. So this became his answer to his pilgrimage, is he has to solve this issue. He has to find peace while righting the sins of his family in order to make the Cyrodiil Empire cohesive again. So during this battle, the Luxodons won, and the voice of Sigorius was in his head saying, "You have to finish the job. You have to kill him, because otherwise you'll lose your family." So Sigorius was using the threat of killing Zuka's mother to make him do what he wanted. So what did Gerald do? He did the third option, which was to stab himself with the dagger, sucking his soul out of him, which Sigorius didn't enjoy this at all, but then he was like, I guess that's fine, whatever. So Sigorius appeared, and he wanted the dagger because it had Zuka's soul in it. This was where Martin almost TPK'd the party, because he took the dagger and dimension doored 500 feet away, which was well out of the range of the arena they were fighting in. And Sigorius told the party, bring me the dagger, or have him bring me the dagger, and they're like, we don't know how, so he started fireballing everybody. So the party almost got killed here. In all honesty, I probably should have killed the party just because of the fact that, it's a demon lord. I don't think a demon lord's going to roll over and allow someone to do this to them. But I never want to do a TPK because the odds are heavily stacked against them and the party didn't do what I thought they were going to do or what I wanted them to do. So I let them get away with it. A majority of them fell, but then I had him start to kill off the NPCs that they had started to like, namely almost the entire royal family of the Cyrodiil Empire. Most notably, Zuka's mother was transformed into a demon lord herself and started to rain down fireballs onto the capital. So Gerald loved this. He was like, that's amazing. I had no idea you were going to do all that stuff. I'm a little upset that Martin fucked it all up, though. Because had he, stabbed himself, Sigorius, I don't think would have transformed his mother into a demon lord. But Zuka would have come back as some sort of force to be reckoned with under Sigorius's control, and the party would have to find out how to free him from that in order to bring him back. What ended up happening was this was when Gerald ended up starting to play Abel. Abel was a barbarian. What was he, a Goliath? Yeah, a Goliath barbarian that was essentially the best friend of Zuka and his bodyguard. Gerald ended up having an idea for Abel, but I think the mistake was the fact that he wanted me to NPC Abel, and I gave him a completely different persona than what Gerald had in mind. And I think that's where he didn't enjoy playing Abel. Is I did a decent job from what I was told, and it was more than he was able to commit to, I guess. So he ended up not liking Abel very much. So eventually, I gave him an out, and he was able to have Abel just leave the location they were at, the like final story arc where they were looking for the pillar of the Lightbringer, and Abel just left the party, and then we get to Kai. So Abel, I didn't have much story except for the fact that Abel is currently dead by the hands of Zuko, because he ended up becoming Sigorius's puppet in order to try to save Zuka. He was tricked because, he's a barbarian. His intelligence isn't terrible, but he was still like blinded by rage, trying to save his friend. And what better way than with the power of a demon lord to do it? Kai. Kai is a really cool character I liked. He was a what is it called? I think he was a homebrew class called the Paragon. Essentially, he uses charisma and strength in combat. I think it's charisma and strength. Maybe it was dex. Charisma and strength. So almost a lot like a bard in a way, which he played him a lot like a bard. He had these boons that he could do for the party to give them special abilities and stuff like that. But it was a really cool character. Gerald really enjoyed playing Kai. He was I think a 16-year-old kid with a older brother named Quinn, who was his main character in the campaign that's ongoing. But last session he actually died, so kind of awkward, but whatever. Anyway, Kai has a demon that was trapped inside of him. They're not sure why. They don't know exactly how that came to be. Kai is essentially the half brother of Quinn, and Quinn's goal is to figure out how to free Kai this demon, while Kai, all he wants to do is pursue power and become famous for his skills. which ultimately is probably something a demon would do. They want to become the best warrior, like in their area, if not the whole entire world. So Kai was very well played by Gerald. I really enjoyed Kai. He played him kind of, as a kid that's seeing things for the first time. He uh, was awestruck by many, many things, and Gerald played this really well. So Kai is definitely one of Gerald's best characters. But in all honesty, Gerald plays really good characters. His RP is really good. I enjoy it. Kai is still currently alive, and his full story is still yet to be seen. I do have plans, even with Quinn being dead, I do have plans to allow Gerald to see what happens to Kai. So I don't want to go into too much depth as to what the future is for him. But Zuka's also still alive, and he's currently working with Drumdal Ray. Drumdal Ray. This motherfucker right here. Oh, that's not what I want. Anyway, Drumdal Ray is he was one of the leaders of the Peacekeepers Guild that taught Zuka everything. And he is also the leader of the Emerald Order, which is a secretive organization of alchemists that are looking for an ancient artifact called the Emerald Tablets. Zuka is hunting for these Emerald Tablets to give to him, and because all of that can still influence the story, I'm not going to give it away yet. But could be like in game level stuff, depending on how that all goes. So now we get to Lacan. Lacan is probably the one character that or Lacan is controlled by Reed, the one player that I think put in the most work as a player can for their character. He developed the entire structure of the Titanian Empire. Let's see. Can we see? Okay, so let me go. Now I made all these tokens, but he made this whole list of people that are part of the Titanian bloodline. He put in a lot of work for Lacan. And the funny part about that, with the amount of work that he put into the character, he didn't reveal anything until like session 20 something. Like the party had no idea who Lacan was, where he came from. They didn't know anything about this dude until like 20 sessions in, I think. It might have been, it was probably less than that, but like that's the he builds these stories that are so secretive, but he doesn't give any hints. He doesn't give any context to the players. So I think because he didn't do that, the players just stopped asking. And that's one thing that also, like the players, if something didn't go right, they never did it again. They were like, it'll go wrong again, so I'm just not going to do it. And that's not the case. You know, you try and try again until you finally succeed. You just have to find a different method of doing it. But Lacan is from Titania, which was going to be it was going to be one of the like bigger story arcs. I think was Lacan wanted to go through and he wanted to destroy the Titanian royal family and then the entire empire because of what they did to his little sister. Uh, Reed doesn't know the specifics, and Lacan he's technically a revenant right now, still hell bent on revenge, and that story will come to light at some point. So I'm not going to reveal too much, but essentially his story arc was going to be the party going to Titania and essentially just destroying it or being destroyed by it. Uh, there are some very juicy surprises that I had. Mainly the fact that now that Lacan is a revenant, he is able, like, I allowed him to essentially be able to target the entire royal family when normally the revenant can only target one specific person. But I gave him this luxury, uh, not even knowing that the campaign was going to be ending soon. And he realized that a lot of his siblings were dead. And he wasn't exactly sure why, because of the way Titania's ran. especially after the treaty was signed. Like there was no reason for them to die. But enough of them have died, and the reason, and Reed, if you're ever watching this, the reason is because they were used as sacrifices to bring something from the abyss. I won't tell you what they brought or, what it does, and more than likely you can draw the context because you were playing in the campaign, but that's why some of your brothers and sisters are missing. uh, so yeah, Lacan was a really good character. He was very strong in combat. I don't think I don't think any of these other characters compared to the way that Reed built Lacan. But if you see all these stats, that's also another reason he's got so much. In turn, like his stats, his lowest stat is a 10 in charisma, and whatever. Everything else is 14 and above, which is insane. He rolled really well for the stats, but he also was able to essentially, with all the homebrew content that I have, he was able to stack his AC to. He was able to stack the AC because of the homebrew we used, which made it to where he was like almost unkillable, to the point where word started getting around in the world, and he started to face creatures that were able to whoop his ass. And uh, but yeah, Lacan was probably one of the strongest characters. He went from being a fighter, and then he went to being a it was like a craftsman type thing where he just made all these armors, which his backstory is that he was like a blacksmith. He was learning how to be a blacksmith and create his own armor and stuff like that. So it all tied together. But he was a fighter first, then a craftsman. Then when he died, he came back as a revenant, and he came back as some character from a video game that Reed really liked. It was a homebrew class that Reed was creating himself. I forget what it was called, but doesn't look like he. Yeah, it doesn't look like he actually called it or put it on his sheet anywhere. But yeah, it was actually a really strong. It was very. I would say it was overpowered. There was so much utility in that class, not to mention so much damage and so many ways for him to get out of bad situations. So it was OP, but because he was a revenant and because I had put the stipulation on every time he dies, he loses a month off of his year that he had to complete his task before his soul was damned. So that was kind of the give and take. Yeah, he was super OP, but it was super easy for him to just be erased. The gentleman that or the entity that gave him this opportunity was a creature known as the Shadow Lord, who is the exact opposite of the Lightbringers, the Archon of Light. So the Shadow Lord is trying to spread darkness. The Lightbringers are trying to spread light. Constant, light versus dark story arc kind of thing. And Lacan joined the story arc of the Shadow in order to do his revenge story. It would have been really cool to see them go to Titania and just start whooping everybody's ass, but we didn't get to that point. And perhaps maybe one day we'll see what happens. But Cassius was just there. He was there for two or three sessions the whole time. He is the younger brother of Lacan. He is one of the few royal Titanians that aren't pure evil and trying to destroy everything. And also, he was looking for Lacan because he essentially the story that Reed had wrote was that Cassius somehow found out that there was somebody. Actually, Lacan's not even his real name. Oswald is his real name. Somebody's going around with the name Lacan that has these very specific traits. And Cassius, raised an eyebrow at those, and he's like, that can't be. My brother was exactly like that. So he was on a mission to find this guy, and he ended up joining the party. when they went to go and save Lacan. And then he also found the party after Lacan had died. So I had brought Cassius in essentially so the party would be off guard at what would happen with Lacan coming back from the dead. So they were going. I was wanting them to think that he was going to be playing Cassius now, but then he started playing Lacan. I don't think I have. Yeah, I didn't save the music that we used to bring Lacan, but it was really fun. This character, I think his name was, yeah, Ramses. He was going to be the character he was going to make and play after Lacan finally died, because now that he's a revenant, I think the only thing that would have been able to save him is a wish spell, and even I don't think that would be able to overthrow the Shadow Lord, just because on the stipulations of a wish spell. But he was essentially the caretaker of Lacan as he was growing up. He was the guy that was in charge of teaching Lacan all that he knew and how to fight, how to do all this stuff. And I believe he was some sort of like sword mage, which was it was a really cool thing. It was almost like a paladin in a way, or a cleric, except for it was more reliant on the martial abilities. It was more there for a sort of support style, which, I guess in theory that's a paladin and a cleric as well. But yeah, it was a homebrew entity. But yeah, those were his three characters. He did do a lot of good work on the Titanian Empire, and it's stuff that I still use in the current campaign. And I'll probably do another video about the current party members. Um, but I think the next video I'm going to do is actually go back to the World of Boridil, my very first homebrew campaign, and essentially do a play-by-play of how that ended up getting to where it was, to where we ended it, and talk about where it was meant to go. So that's pretty much all I've got for this video. If anyone has any questions about any of the characters that you've seen here today, or anything else about anything I've talked about, feel free to ask me about it. And appreciate you all watching. And until next time, peace.